The town of Cedar Falls looked like a photograph from an old magazine. Rows of honey brick houses, trimmed lawns, and smiles that always seemed a little too practiced. Emma Lewis fit right in. She taught literature at the local grammar school, baked for charity drives, and kept a house that smelled faintly of vanilla candles and fresh linen. People often said she and her husband Daniel were proof that love could last if you worked hard enough. Behind their blue front door, the air was quieter. Dinner plates were spotless, the bed always made. But conversation had turned into a ritual of politeness. Daniel came home late again, murmuring about deadlines and clients. His tie was loose, his eyes tired in the way of a man used to hiding something. Emma smiled, poured him wine, and told herself that marriages changed with time. Yet small things began to gnaw at her certainty. Phone calls he stepped outside to take. The faint perfume on his coat, floral, unfamiliar. Once when she woke in the night, the other side of the bed was cold. She told herself he had fallen asleep on the sofa, but the sofa was untouched. On Sunday morning, as she cleaned the car before their planned picnic, she noticed something wedged beneath the passenger seat. A flash of silver caught her eye. She reached down and lifted an earring, delicate, heart-shaped, studded with a single red stone. It wasn't hers. She held it between her fingers, feeling its weight, her heartbeat rising like a drum. When Daniel appeared at the doorway, coffee in hand, she quickly slipped the earring into her pocket. "You're up early," he said. "I couldn't sleep," she replied, forcing a smile. "Thought I'd clean the car." He laughed softly. "You worry too much, Em." She watched him walk back inside, his silhouette framed by morning light. Something in his ease frightened her more than any confession could have. That night, she placed the earring in her bedside drawer, next to their wedding photo. The smiling couple in the frame looked like strangers. Emma stood by the window as darkness crept over Cedar Falls. She could see the faint reflection of herself in the glass, eyes uncertain, lips pressed tight. The life she'd built with Daniel suddenly felt fragile, a porcelain facade waiting for one careless touch to shatter it. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, fading into the night. She turned back to the photo on her nightstand, the earring glinting beside it like a warning. She thought she knew her husband. She was wrong. Rain clawed at the windows of the Lewis house that night, streaking the glass in trembling lines. Emma sat at the kitchen table, pen poised above her leather journal. The pages had become her secret ledger, a record of late arrivals and hollow excuses. Client dinner, project delay, site visit. Each entry was a scar of its own. The clock read 1:43 a.m. When she finally closed the book, the space beside her still empty. By morning, Daniel's car was gone. His phone rang unanswered until sunrise when he finally walked through the door, hair damp, suit rumpled, but face calm. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. He smiled the way he used to when he wanted to win her back. "Leeds, last-minute meeting." "You knew that." Emma's hands trembled. "I called the firm. They said you weren't scheduled anywhere." His eyes darkened, voice lowering. "You're doing it again, Em. Twisting things in your head." He brushed past her, pouring coffee with the serenity of a man who knew control was his weapon. That evening, Emma stared at her reflection in the hallway mirror, the memory of his tone still echoing. Was she imagining it? Was she losing her grip? No, she decided. Not this time. The next night, when Daniel announced another late client call, she followed. Her small car trailed his black sedan through sheets of rain, headlights blurring into the night. She parked across from a dimly lit cafe near the outskirts of town. Through the windshield, she saw him step out, coat collar turned up, and approach a woman holding a small child. They spoke briefly before he knelt, smiling tenderly, and the woman leaned in. The woman kissed him like she'd done it 1,000 times before. The image of that kiss haunted Emma like a fever. The way Daniel held the woman's face, the small boy's hand gripping his sleeve, it wasn't the clumsy affection of an affair. It was love. Familiar, domestic, practiced. For 2 days she said nothing. She taught her classes, smiled at neighbors, baked a batch of lemon scones for the church sale. But each act felt mechanical, like she was performing the part of Mrs. Lewis while something inside her withered. When Daniel kissed her cheek before work, she inhaled the scent of another life on him. Something floral, something wrong. That night, when he fell asleep on the sofa, she unlocked his phone. His messages were meticulous, brief, coded. Wednesday as planned. He's excited to see you. The contact name was C. Her thumb hovered before opening the photos. Daniel by the seaside, holding a child with soft curls. The woman from the cafe smiled beside them. A family framed in sunlight. The metadata said Brighton. She had never been there with him. Emma printed the photos, tucked them into a manila folder, and placed it behind her cookbooks. The next morning, she started keeping a second journal, one that documented every movement, every transaction, every lie. She found receipts from toy shops, a bank transfer to a Claire Havers, and hotel bookings under false names. When she finally told her closest friend, Sarah Wickham, over coffee, the words came out in a whisper. He has another family, a woman and a child. Sarah's spoon froze mid-stir. You need to go to the police, Emma. Emma shook her head. Not yet. I want to understand why. That night, she sat by the fire, replaying the timeline of their marriage in her mind. The proposal under the falling snow in Bath, the honeymoon cottage in Cornwall, the promise he made, I'll never lie to you. She could still hear the crunch of snow underfoot when he slipped the ring on her finger. Back then, his hands had trembled with love. Now they trembled with deceit. The next evening, she waited for him in the kitchen, a photo of him with the other woman lying face down on the table. When he walked in, rain dripping from his coat, she lifted her gaze. Who is Claire? She asked. Daniel paused, eyes calm, almost relieved. Then his lips curved into a faint smile. He didn't deny it. He smiled. The silence after Daniel's smile was heavier than any confession. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He simply poured himself a drink, the sound of ice against glass slicing through the quiet. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, careful. It isn't what you think, Em. Claire needed help. I stayed for the boy's sake. You'd have done the same. Emma's pulse thudded in her ears. You had a child with her. His eyes flicked up, glinting with irritation. Don't twist things. You've always been dramatic. It was the beginning of a new kind of cruelty, one built on doubt, not rage. He told her she misheard things, that she exaggerated, that she was tired, forgetful. When she mentioned the photos, he claimed she'd edited them. When she repeated his lies back to him, he laughed and said, You really should see someone. This obsession isn't healthy. Within weeks, her confidence withered. Friends noticed her distance, her quietness at gatherings. Sarah tried to intervene, but Emma brushed it off with polite excuses. The truth had become a maze of his making. During a routine checkup, her psychiatrist, Dr. Adler, noticed faint bruises around her wrist. Emma claimed they were from gardening, yet her voice faltered. The doctor's concern lingered in the air like smoke. That night, as Daniel slept beside her, Emma lay awake, watching the faint glow of the alarm clock. She reached beneath the mattress and pulled out a small digital recorder, her new weapon. From that moment, she recorded everything. His phone calls, his late-night conversations, even the way he spoke to her when he thought she wasn't listening. Days passed in quiet paranoia. She learned to smile when he entered the room, to nod at his lies while the red light of the recorder blinked from her handbag. She collected fragments of truth like shards of glass, each one sharp enough to cut through the facade. One evening, she played back a recording she'd made while he was in the study. His voice came through low and steady. He was speaking to someone. Once she's gone, I'll make it clean, he said. A pause. Then 6 words that drained every trace of warmth from her body. She'll never see it coming. Emma stopped the tape, her breath shallow. The recorder's red light pulsed in the dark, steady as a heartbeat, and she knew something terrible was on its way. The morning Emma Lewis vanished. Frost clung to the hedgerows and the air carried the bite of November. Her car was found at dawn, doors unlocked, parked near the still water of Blackmere Lake. The driver's seat was empty, the keys still dangling from the ignition, her handbag neatly placed on the passenger seat. Inside, police found her wedding ring wrapped in a tissue. By midday, Daniel Lewis stood outside their home, speaking to a crowd of reporters. His eyes were red, his tone cracked in all the right places. Emma's my world, he said, voice quivering. If anyone knows where she is, please bring her home. Cameras clicked as he wiped away a tear that never quite formed. The town of Cedar Falls turned Emma's disappearance into a vigil of pity and fear. Her students left flowers on the school steps, neighbors held candles in front of the Lewis house, and the parish organized nightly prayers. Through it all, Daniel remained the grieving husband, composed, devoted, magnetic in his tragedy. Detective Laura Bennett watched him closely during her first interview. She had spent 15 years reading lies behind polite smiles, and Daniel's calm unsettled her. He spoke of Emma's gentle nature, their ordinary happiness, yet his hands never once shook. "You're handling this well," she remarked. He met her gaze with practiced sorrow. "She'd want me to stay strong." Later that week, footage surfaced from a petrol station 20 miles outside town. The timestamp matched the night Emma vanished. Detective Bennett watched the grainy black and white video as Daniel's car pulled into frame. He stepped out, wearing gloves, methodically wiping the inside of the boot with a cloth. His movements were deliberate, unhurried. He bought a single cup of coffee, smiled at the cashier, and drove off into the darkness. No sign of Emma, no sign of struggle, just a man cleaning his car in the dead of night. The next morning, Bennett returned to the lake. Police divers combed the freezing water, their torches slicing through the murk. The crowd watched from the banks, breath misting in the cold air. Daniel stood among them, face lit by the flicker of candles, a portrait of sorrow sculpted for the cameras. As the divers surfaced empty-handed, Bennett turned toward him, studying the faint smirk that ghosted across his lips before he looked away. The perfect husband had finally slipped, and the camera caught it. The search at Blackmere Lake stretched into its second week. The press called it the vanishing wife mystery, splashing Daniel's face across every newspaper in the region. Detective Laura Bennett ignored the noise. She knew charm when it was used as armor. When forensics returned the first report, the room fell silent. Traces of Emma Lewis's blood were found in the boot of Daniel's car, soaked deep into the lining. A partial handprint smeared across the latch. Bennett studied the photos under the harsh light of the evidence room, the crimson stains glowing like proof of a secret long denied. Daniel was brought in for questioning. He sat straight-backed, immaculate in a dark suit, voice measured. "Emma had a nosebleed months ago. We used that car to drive to the coast. You'll find plenty of innocent things that look sinister if you want to." Bennett leaned forward. "And the bleach, Mr. Lewis? The receipts show you bought 2 bottles the night she disappeared." He smiled faintly. "You are reaching." The interview ended without a confession, but a new development arrived from an unexpected source. Sarah Wickham, Emma's closest friend, walked into the station clutching a box. Inside were 3 small digital recorders and a journal labeled March to October. "She told me to keep them safe if anything happened to her," Sarah said, voice trembling. Bennett played the first recording. Daniel's voice filled the room, smooth and deliberate. "You make everything harder, Em. You push and push until someone has to stop you." A pause. Then a chilling statement delivered in that same calm tone. "Once she's gone, I'll make it clean." The tapes destroyed the illusion of the perfect husband. A warrant was issued for further searches of the Lewis property and surrounding woods. Then one bitterly cold morning, divers working the lake signaled from beneath the ice. Bennett arrived as they pulled a long, plastic-wrapped shape from the water's edge. The crowd was held back, the air thick with dread. Bennett knelt beside the recovery team, her gloves slick with frost, and watched as the wrapping was sliced open. The faint glint of metal caught her eye, a wedding ring on a pale, lifeless hand. She closed her eyes, certain the case had reached its end. But when the coroner lifted the sheet, her heart froze. The body wasn't Emma's. The body from Blackmere Lake lay under a sterile sheet at the county morgue. Detective Laura Bennett stood beside the coroner as the fluorescent lights buzzed above. When the cloth was lifted, the pale curve of the woman's face emerged. Dark hair matted with lake water, a faint bruise along the jawline. It wasn't Emma Lewis. The dental records confirmed it within hours. The victim was Claire Havers, the woman Daniel had kept hidden, the one Emma had found him with in the rain. The revelation hit Cedar Falls like a storm. News vans lined the streets. Parents kept their children home. A small boy, 4-year-old Noah Havers, was suddenly missing. His name whispered across every headline. Detective Bennett called for Daniel's immediate arrest. But when officers arrived at his home, the house was silent. His phone, wallet, and passport were gone. In the kitchen sat a single folded note addressed to the police. It read, "You were never supposed to find her." Pinned beneath it was a photograph, Emma and Daniel at their wedding, smiling as snowflakes fell around them. The ink had bled from moisture, blurring the edges of their faces. Inside the incident room, Bennett stood before a wall of photographs. On one side, Emma's life, school, friends, the neat order of a devoted wife. On the other, Claire's, rental flats, a child's drawings, letters signed with hope and loneliness. Between them, red string connected places and dates, two timelines running parallel until they met in betrayal and death. The more Bennett studied Daniel's movements, the clearer the pattern became. He had orchestrated both disappearances, each a mirror of the other. The lake, the ring, the blood, every clue designed to blur the line between the two women. He intended to fake Emma's death using Claire's body, vanish with the child, and start again under a new name. But something had gone wrong. Bennett visited Claire's last known address, a small farmhouse outside Leeds. Toys lay scattered in the dust. A child's shoe beneath the table, a kettle still plugged in. The place reeked of sudden departure. She found no sign of Noah. As dusk fell, she returned to the station. The forensic team was waiting with news. The note Daniel left behind had yielded a single clear fingerprint. Bennett unfolded the report, her breath steady, eyes scanning the page. The print wasn't Daniel's. It belonged to Emma Lewis, and somewhere in the shadows of England, the devoted wife was still alive. 3 months after the discovery at Blackmere Lake, a quiet village in Northumberland became the center of another breaking story. A woman calling herself Anna Reeves was arrested outside a small post office after a neighbor recognized her from a national missing persons appeal. Her real name was Emma Lewis. When Detective Laura Bennett arrived, Emma was calm, almost serene. She sat in the interview room wearing a simple cardigan, her hair shorter, her voice steady. "I ran to stay alive," she said. "Daniel killed Claire. He tried to make it look like me. I had to disappear before he found me, too." Bennett studied her across the table, uncertain whether she was listening to a victim or an architect. "Why the fingerprint, Emma? Why leave it on his note?" Emma's gaze didn't waver. "He wanted me to vanish. I wanted him to know I could." Investigators began to piece together the months before the disappearance. The recordings Sarah had handed over were incomplete. A final device was found buried beneath the floorboards of Emma's home office. On it, a conversation captured in wind and whispers played through static. Emma's voice. "She deserves to know who he really is." Claire's reply. "If what you're saying is true, I'll meet you." "The lake, tomorrow evening." Bennett listened in silence as the tape ended with the sound of footsteps and a sudden splash. Forensic analysis tied Emma to the site. Fibers from her coat. Her boot prints on the bank beside Claire's body. Daniel's DNA was nowhere near the scene. In the search for justice, the roles had inverted. The devoted wife had become both avenger and executioner. When officers finally traced Daniel's whereabouts, they found his car submerged near an abandoned quarry 20 miles north. Inside lay only a skeleton in a suit, a fractured skull, and the same earring Emma had discovered months earlier glinting on the dashboard. At dawn, Detective Bennett stood at the lake once more, the cold wind biting through her coat. In the distance, police lights shimmered across the water. She watched Emma being led away, face unreadable, eyes fixed on the horizon as if staring into a memory no one else could see. Bennett's voiceover would close the case file months later. In love, devotion and destruction often wear the same face. The lines blur when the heart becomes a weapon. The camera lingered on the still surface of Blackmere Lake, the ripples fading beneath the pale light of morning. She didn't lose her husband. She buried him.